Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Blue Devil Beat. I'm your host, Ranjan Jindal, here joined by my co-host, Caleb Dudley. How are you, Caleb?
I'm doing good. March is finally here.
March is here. It's just us in the studio today because we're going to be doing a ACC tournament preview for both the men's and women's basketball tournament. We're going to recap the past week in Duke basketball and preview a little bit of the Duke versus UNC rivalry challenge or rivalry contest that's about to come up Saturday in Cameron Indoor. And then the next time we record, as you just mentioned to me, we will have a bracket. So that's going to be really exciting stuff. The women's tournament starts tomorrow. We're recording this on a Thursday. The women's tournament
started yesterday.
Sure, for Duke, I mean. But yes, correct. And I will be heading down to Duluth to cover that. So should be a great time. And then Caleb is going to be in Charlotte for the ACC men's basketball tournament. And so we'll give you everything you need to know about those tournaments, even though we don't have a bracket for that yet. First, this podcast is brought to you by Duke Stores. Support your favorite Duke team. Duke Stores is home to the only collection of merchandise brought to you straight from Duke University. Go to shop.duke.edu for all of your Duke merch. All right, so you covered Duke men's basketball's recent win against NC State, so we'll start with that, and then we'll talk about the North Carolina matchup, and then we'll talk about ACC tournament. We'll go women's and then men's. So to start with the past week in men's basketball, Duke went into Raleigh and absolutely dominated the Wolfpack, not a place where Duke always has historically done well, but this was a remarkable showing from a team that is playing its best basketball at the right time. What did you see from that win from Duke?
Yeah, and I guess we haven't talked about Virginia either, right?
No, we haven't. We can talk about it.
Starting with State, though, I think, like you said, it was a pure domination. Our Alex Min, who covered with me, wrote a column about how, and used a lot of quotes from Will Wade, the coach at State, saying like pretty much he thought New State was going to lose. And you could tell in the postgame that he was just kind of resigned to the fact that Duke at this point is a lot better than NC State, and that they tried to throw a zone out there, and he described it as the genius of desperation, just thinking that they had to try something. And, he said it worked for about 8 minutes and then fell off the rails, and I thought that was a pretty accurate assessment of what happened during the game. I thought the Wolfpack hung in early with some threes. Darian Williams hit, I think, 3 of his first 6. But, Duke just is a machine on offense and just kept chipping away. Started getting the ball inside and ended up getting all the State bigs in foul trouble, which for a team that doesn't have a lot of big depth, the Wolfpack and they have small bigs to start with. It was a recipe for disaster. But other than that, I thought the main story was Dame Sarr, who I think probably his best game he's had in a Duke uniform. He had 18 points, three ball looked really good. Defense is obviously spectacular. That's been the case all year, and I believe he had 8 rebounds as well. So just a well-rounded game, and the kind of game Duke's going to want from him going forward.
Yeah, because theoretically a zone would maybe work if you don't have the matchup advantage of Duke, if Duke's not shooting the 3 ball well. But Duke did 2 things really well. They shot the 3. You mentioned Dame Sarr. He hit 3. Isaiah Evans hit 4. He's been really on a heater. And then Duke really moved the ball well. That's how you beat a zone, go inside out. And I thought, Duke had 24 assists. They really got it into the middle and then had some alleys to Malik Brown. When they double-teed Cam Boozer, occasionally they got a couple turnovers, but for the most part, I thought that, he was able to find the open man, and then he was as efficient as always, 8 for 10 from the field, 9 for 11 from the free throw line for 26 points. So
yeah, I think I saw a stat like his last 4 games, he's only averaging taking like 10 shots a game, but he's averaging 20-some points because he's just ruthlessly efficient and gets to the line really well. You mentioned taking care of the ball. I wrote about that in my gamer, but just wanted to point out Caleb Foster with 7 assists, 0 turnovers. It's been really recently on a stretch of really protecting the ball, which has been – he hasn't shot the ball spectacular. He was 2 for 8 against NC State, but being able to protect the ball like that and run the offense is really all Duke needs at this point.
Yeah, and then that Virginia game you mentioned, that too, it was another dominant conference win in Cameron Indoor, 77-51. This was really, really impressive. Duke came out of the gates looking strong and – never let Virginia creep back into the game. This was another time I think Duke's won like 4, maybe 3 or 4 conference wins against ranked opponents in Cameron Indoor and just have absolutely demolished them. And you really see this 3-point defense from Duke looking strong. Virginia was one of the better teams from 3, shoots 7 for 35. That's become a pattern of late. You see that against Michigan, against Clemson, against Louisville. Duke is just shutting down opposing offenses from 3, and that completely changes the outlook of the game, and it was a great performance from Duke.
Yeah, I think there was, this possession that Isaiah had at the end of the first half where he forced that shot clock violation knocked it out of bounds on Chance Mallory, and then Caleb forced a shot clock violation right before half. Those jump out as, instances of that, and I think all their perimeter defenders are at this point really, really solid. Evans obviously started out 3 for 3 from three, and he was letting it fly. And when Duke gets out to that kind of advantage, and he gets hot, it's trouble for a lot of other teams. But yeah, like you said, I think we thought coming in maybe Virginia was second best team in the ACC, and they still are in terms of the seeding. But Duke kind of proved that it's a class of its own.
Yeah, they really did, and I thought they matched Virginia's physicality. I mean, Virginia made it tough on Boozer with their bigs down low, and he had some tough field goal numbers, but I thought he was able to get to the line and get his where it mattered most. And the first half was a little bit ugly offensively for both sides outside of Slim doing his thing, but in the second half it was nice to see Duke move the ball. Darren Harris hit a couple threes.
Darren Harris hit a three in I believe 4 or 5 straight games.
Wow, that's good for him. Good
definitely, the bench is definitely starting to. It seems like maybe they have one extra guy than they had a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so now Duke is going to be playing North Carolina this Saturday. It's going to be the rematch. Do we know the status of Caleb Wilson? Questionable.
Questionable, I would say.
Yeah, he was out against Clemson in their most recent matchup. But I don't know. Regardless, I think this is going to be a tough one for North Carolina to win. Honestly, I've been really impressed with them without Caleb Wilson. I think they've done a pretty good job of adjusting and, have some quality wins at home, albeit with the 3-game win streak against Louisville, Virginia Tech, and Clemson. They've had some other players step up. Vasar, Seth Trimble, Derek Dixon a couple times. And so, they still have talented players and they have 3-point shooters, which is what can defeat Duke. But as you've seen, when teams have faced Duke, they haven't been able to connect from three very much. So what do you think Duke needs to do to win this game against North Carolina?
Yeah, I'm gonna cheat a little bit here. I'm writing 5 questions for the UNC.
Oh
game,
yeah.
And so I'll cheat there. I have them written down here. First was just which way does the whistle blow? I think it was a big storyline last time that North Carolina played second half in Chapel Hill without any foul trouble. They had 1 foul, and Duke really struggled to get to the line. And these teams are the 2 best in the ACC at getting to the line. They take the most free throws in the league, and so I mean that's going to be a huge storyline for both these teams. Second is how does Duke deploy Dame Sarr? And we mentioned Sarr and his performance against the Wolfpack. He was also excellent against North Carolina the first time. What kind of impact does he have? Does he guard Wilson if Wilson returns? Right on that is what kind of impact does Caleb Wilson have? Does he play? If not, how does that affect North Carolina? Then how does Duke's bench play? There's been times this year where, especially the first North Carolina game, where Nick Kamenia was pretty much a non-factor. And Darren Harris didn't play at all really in that game. So how do those guys play? And Caden Boozer and Malik Brown obviously fit in that as well. And then finally, can North Carolina shoot the same way it shot in Chapel Hill? They shot 40% from three, and they're not that good. They're not a 40% shooting team on the season, and so will Duke, with the home court advantage, be able to lower that number a good bit.
Yeah, Luka Bogovac just had the game of his life against Clemson with 6 threes. Harkens back to maybe Cormac Ryan showing from 2 years ago in Cameron Indoor. I mean, that was the last time a team has come into Cameron Indoor Stadium and beaten Duke. It's been 2 years, which is kind of crazy to think about.
Yeah.
But he's a guy that I'm watching because, I mean, he can space the floor and has a quick release, can kind of shoot over the top of a lot of people. So if he can make some threes, it can be kind of close. But I just thought before Caleb Wilson got going in that first matchup, Duke was really locking down North Carolina. They were up, I believe 20-6, 19-6 or something like that, and then Caleb started making some tough shots. So I still give the lean here to Duke, but it's always tough to pick in the rivalry matchup.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I think Ken Palm has it as a 16-point spread, which feels like
16. Oh wow, that's assuming he's out. I guess
feels like a lot. Especially, I'm assuming Caleb Wilson's out, but I do think. I mean, it's pretty obvious Duke's playing its best basketball since they lost to North Carolina last time. You think about the last 4 games is a win against the then number 1 team, a 40-point win against Notre Dame, and then 2 blowouts against tournament teams in Virginia and NC State. So Duke's peaking at the right time is what you want in March, and I think it'll be a back and forth game on Saturday, but it should be a good way to end out the season.
Yeah, it should be. All right, let's talk some ACC tournament here. We will start with the women's ACC tournament. So I mentioned they're playing in Duluth, not Greensboro anymore. Some people have complained about that, but
some people. Courtney Banghart.
Yes, Courtney Banghart. But hey, it's a new experience. We'll see what happens. I will give the review next week when we come back and give the official, what was the lay of the land in Duluth, because I loved Greensboro. We went there a couple times, I remember.
Yeah.
Anyways, so we are recording before Virginia and Clemson are playing in this second round. So the winner of that's going to take on Duke in the quarterfinals Friday at 11 a.m. And then in Duke's the 1 seed, like I mentioned. 2 seed is Louisville, 3 seed North Carolina, and 4 seed NC State. So if Duke beats the winner of Virginia and Clemson, it will play likely NC State or Notre Dame. And so that is kind of the path for Duke women's basketball. Look, this team is on a little bit of a skid after their remarkable win streak, 2 of the past 3 losses. And it's going to be tough, especially in this setting, because Duke is not the deepest team in the league, and back-to-back wins is tough. They did it last year, but it's going to be interesting. What are some of the keys that you think Duke needs to do to move through this tournament well? Because I know you watched that North Carolina loss most recently, and they didn't look super sharp there.
Yeah, I think the key, and this, it's probably pretty obvious, but I think the key for them is getting Toby Fournier going. She didn't have a great game against North Carolina the second time. But like you think about the state game a couple weeks ago, she dominated the Wolfpack. So I think just getting her going, she's not the best free throw shooter, so sometimes it's hard when you try to feed her a lot and she gets to the line and then ends up missing. But I think, being able to get her good looks early, get her confidence up was going to be huge. And then obviously you mentioned the depth, and I think you're going to need at least one of Jordan Wood and Ariana Roberson to be on every night, probably both, just because you're playing with 7. I don't think Anna Wikstrom's going to get many minutes. She might, honestly, in this format, get some minutes, but I think you're going to need those 2 to be on their game because, if you have 7 players and 3 of them play bad, you're in a bad spot, right? So, but yeah, I think, like you mentioned, I think Duke's defense has puts them in any game, and they're probably the favorite to win the whole thing, and dodging Louisville and Carolina until the championship is obviously really good too. So. We'll see. I think they, have as good chances as anybody. So
yeah, I totally agree. I'm watching kind of 2 keys. One is it's kind of always an issue with Duke women's basketball, but it's turnovers. Like, are they getting a shot on every possession? This is probably one of the most talented teams in terms of like shot making, offensive capability that Kara's had, but it's still kind of a bit of an issue with turnovers, especially those like post entry passes and transitions. Sometimes Duke gets a little excited, and I get it. But Duke's offense is built on a lot of like off-ball movement. There's not a lot of one-on-one going on, so there's a lot of passing. But if they lead to turnovers, then it becomes tough for Duke to be efficient offensively. So keep the turnovers down, make some shots. Riley Nelson has been tremendous shot maker. She's a big key. And then you mentioned free throws. Those are the 2 things that I think will propel Duke to victory. The Louisville rematch would be interesting because they came back against Duke the first time they played. I think those are 2 very evenly matched teams. Louisville has a lot of guards, a lot of guard depth. So a possible championship game against them or North Carolina would be fun, because wouldn't that be fun? A Duke Carolina ACC championship. I know both of those teams play similar styles. It's going to be it was higher scoring last time. It wasn't a classic, Duke North Carolina bomber there, but it should be a fun tournament. I think this is going to be big for seeding implications. I think Duke is relatively solidly in the hosting range. I actually just pulled up Charlie Cream's bracketology. I think they were a 3 last time. They're still a 3 right now. I don't see them really dropping below a 4, which means they would still host. But I think the difference between a 3 and a 2 is big, because the 1 seeds this year are talented, and Duke has played 2 of them, and they weren't very pretty games. So obviously Duke has gotten better since then, but I think a 2 seed matchup for Duke, or 3-2, is going to be a better possible Sweet 16 than a 1-4. Okay, yeah, that'll be a fun tournament. Keep up with our coverage at DukeChronicle.com of that. Me and one of our freshmen, Ella, will be there all following along. We'll probably do some Instagram takeovers at the Duke Chronicle. Yeah, and Twitter at Chronicle Sports. We'll be live tweeting from there, and then my personal one as well. Probably maybe post a couple things.
Oh.
Okay, let's flip over to the men's side. We don't have the bracket yet, but we do know that Duke is locked to the 1 seed.
Yeah,
I believe.
I think the top 4 is locked.
The top 4 is locked. Okay, so that is Duke, Virginia, Miami, and North Carolina. And unless Clemson loses to Georgia Tech, Clemson will be the 5 seed.
Yep.
Georgia Tech's on a 10-game losing streak, by the way, or something like that. I just noticed that.
They're really bad, yeah.
Yeah.
They're not making an ACC tournament. They're eliminated from contention.
So that's perfect time for them to beat Clemson then.
Exactly.
Okay. Anyways, so so Duke's going to have the 1 seed again, and we'll, have a relatively a 9 game that I think Duke should probably win, although Duke had some close contests against Florida State. I think, is Florida State in there?
Well, so they play SMU, and the winner, I think, will be the 9.
Yeah, so both of those are 2 quality teams, I would say, that, I think Duke is significantly better than, but both of them have the potential to disrupt. And Then Duke would play North Carolina theoretically in the semifinals, which would be interesting. Or Clemson, right? Yeah, exactly. Okay, preview this ACC tournament for us. What are you looking for from? Well, I guess I'll start with this. Is there a team that you would be not worried about, but that you're looking at that could possibly challenge Duke the most in this ACC tournament setting across the bracket, regardless of who it would be?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned this, I don't know when that was, 2 weeks ago, 2 episodes ago. I think Florida State really has the potential to be a disruptor in this tournament, and you just mentioned them as well. They just shoot the ball at such a high clip, and if they start falling, it's not much you can do about it. I think Robert McCray V is one of the most fun players in the country to watch, and had an excellent game against Clemson when they won a couple weeks ago at 25 plus, and he's one of the top assist guys in the country. So I'm watching them as a lower seed. I think outside of the top 4 in that next tier of single buys, I think Louisville can be tricky. Maybe, I mean, not as much for Duke because I think their size isn't what it needs to be. I don't think Frew and Zegras are going to cut it, but I think Michael Brown, obviously Ryan Conwell, Adrian Woolley, Isaac McNeely, those guys get going. And against any team in that tournament, it could be tough. Usually a ACC tournament, how it goes is it'll be some guard will get hot and they'll go on a run.
Exactly.
Hunter Couture is who jumps to mind. And so, but yeah, I think, I mean, on the other side, assuming Duke, gets to the championship, I think Virginia or Miami would be a fun matchup. Yeah. Miami, obviously Duke is the only team Duke hasn't played this season. In the ACC, I think it would be a fun one, and obviously there's a storyline there with Jay Lucas, but I think it'll be the best event of the year besides March Madness ACC tournament. So, super excited to be there and take in a lot of hoops.
Yeah, I totally agree on the Florida State take because you have that go-to guy at the end of games that is gonna, can score for you at the end. I'll say the same thing about Stanford, who's playing pretty well right now. If you have Abuka Okori in late game situations, I mean, he's a tough cover. They move the ball well. And I also think a team, you mentioned Hunter Couture, who's obviously not in college anymore, but a team that knows how to play the tournament well. Virginia Tech has experience there. They have talent. They haven't quite lived up to what the expectations were, but they're another kind of sneaky team that I'm seeing within this low group because you mentioned guard play. That's so important. And do you have a guy that can get hot or be a go-to guy? And I think there's a lot of quality scorers in the ACC. I mean, even if you go all the way down to Duke Harris or Boopie Miller, right? There's like a lot of quality individual scorers. The reason I think Miami could be a tough challenge for Duke in the championship is, I mean, they have the size to match up. They have Malik Renaud, they have Uday, and they don't shoot the ball like particularly well, but they know what they're good at. They've locked in pretty well on the defensive end. And yeah, Jay Lucas has coached them pretty well, and I think that could be a fun matchup. I just think Duke right now is playing so much better than everyone else. It's kind of crazy, to be honest, the three-point defense that Duke has and the offensive efficiency that they're playing with. But then again, in a postseason setting, anything can change. Is there like a couple players on Duke or a stat or two that you're watching for within this Duke team that you're like, okay, if they can hit on this, they'll win the ACC?
I mean, I'll say it again. I think if they get the Dame Sarr they got in Raleigh, no one's beating them the rest of the season. I mean, if they get that kind of Dame Sarr, that's lottery pick Dame Sarr, right? And that's the kind of guy they thought he would be from the jump when he came over, I think, from Europe. And Coach Tyler mentioned after the game that he's really come a long way. He's worked relentlessly about his weaknesses, and he's really played into his strengths. And obviously, his strength is defense. But his three balls are really starting to come along. I think his ability to drive to the rim, his finishing is getting much better. Hit a nice dunk against NC State against the zone. So I think I think he's the guy to watch for sure. Another thing about the AC tournament, just in general, I think you mentioned Virginia Tech. There's 8 teams currently in bracketology from the ACC, with Virginia Tech and Cal on the outside looking in, and Virginia Tech's in the first 4 out, Cal in the next 4 out. Wow. So those 2 teams are obviously playing for a lot. I think every other team is going to make it. That's already in. SMU's the last 4 buys, but they're the first one, so I don't think they drop out, even unless they lose maybe the next 2. But a lot of teams playing for a lot of things there. I think Duke obviously is in the driver's seat for the number 1 overall seed, but every other team is still jockeying for pretty important seeding.
Yeah, that's a good point. So a lot to play for. And you mentioned Dame Sarr. That's great. I think the interesting thing is, I mean, Slim is playing his role very well. I think Jimenez kind of found a little bit of a niche, like being a good rebounder and defender, which is crazy to think about because that wasn't his strength early in the season. I'm not necessarily saying on-ball defense, but he's done a good job, like just hustling and
he's definitely
fighting for loose balls and drawing. I mean, he drew a few fouls on Adayamara against Michigan, and he did a couple. He did it, I think, against Virginia too. And so, I mean, he's going to get minutes, so he's going to have to be productive in them. He hasn't shot the ball particularly well recently, but we know he can. It seems like Caleb Foster and Caden Boozer are getting very comfortable running this offense. And so it's just, Duke has a lot of margin for error, I guess I will say, because everything seems to work so well on that click on the offensive end. But, you know, if the 3-point defense does not do as well as it has been, that could lead to some teams coming back and possibly taking down the Blue Devils. But I don't see it. I see Duke taking down back-to-back ACC championships.
Yeah,
I
agree.
Yeah.
We haven't mentioned Cam Boozer. I think. I mean, the strategy for the other teams in the ACC tournament. What do you do on a short day rest trying to play for Cam Boozer, right?
Yeah, it's crazy.
Will Wade mentioned you try to play zone on him, but you've got an absolute engine, a mountain down there. You can just throw it to him, and they double him. He just passes it out of it. So he's going to be a nightmare, I think, for teams in the ACC tournament, and it's been a nightmare all season for every team. But I'm with you. I think Duke takes it home in Charlotte.
I agree. All right. Well, follow Caleb's coverage and Abby, our sports editor, will be there in Charlotte at DukeChronicle.com. They will be, they'll be there all 3 days, hopefully, if Duke stays there the rest of the time. And basketball season is the good coverage is getting upon us. We'll have our postseason print edition out before March Madness. Yeah, before March Madness starts.
Abby and I working on it over break. So
they'll be there doing all that good stuff. Hopefully, we get some like last year where we had the center spread was the 2 gamers from the men's and women's ACC championship game. So maybe we can get that again this year because that would be pretty exciting and great for both programs as a whole. But this is fun time for coverage. We will be off this weekend. I guess we'll record next weekend into early next week as we preview the first 2 rounds of March Madness, which may be in my hometown of Greenville, South Carolina. Maybe not.
I mean, it'll be there. But will Duke be there?
That's true. That's true. That's what I So thank you guys so much for listening. This is a shorter episode, just us on. We really appreciate it. And we'll hopefully have some fun guests on in the teams that Duke will be playing in the March Madness.
And tell them how they can get their Kville shirt.
Oh, yes. This is very exciting news. So we just have Caleb and Abby had this fantastic idea to go around Kville, ask all the tents their names, something identifying about their tent, and we mocked up our Kyle Fox, who's our managing director and creative director, mocked up this shirt with all of the tents in Kville. How you can get it, there is a form circulating on the Kville GroupMe's, and you could also win a free shirt on our Instagram at DukeChronicle.com. Tag a friend in the comments, share that reel, and you can get a free one of them. If you didn't win the contest, they're $20. And there's a Google form we'll link in the show notes as well if you want one of those. Yep. So they're great shirts.
Yep.
All right. We will see you guys. I hope if you're a Duke student, have a fantastic spring break. We will be certainly covering some basketball during spring break, so that'll be fun for us. For Caleb Dudley, I'm Ranjan Jindal. This has been Blue Devil Beat.